Hello? Good evening, everyone. Oh, there it is. There it is. Good evening, everyone. In case you're unaware, my name is TJ Kirk. I'm blessed to be a part of the Jacks Creek congregation in Henderson, Tennessee. Also very fortunate to work with the coolest kids in the world at the middle school in Chester County. I absolutely love working with 4th and 5th graders, and I get paid to do it. And so that's just a little bit about me. I certainly want to appreciate you guys for having me. I was just a little nervous with the topic. You can imagine, just a little bit nervous. I've been a part of conversations and meetings about similar things, and I've seen them go very well. I've also been a part of some that did not go as well as we had desired. But after thinking about what this topic is, with you asking me to come and speak about how to talk to children, your children, about this topic of racism, that says something to me, that lets me know that this congregation is aware of a thing called racism. They are aware that it exists and it affects people, and possibly, more than likely, even aware that it has infiltrated the church in some parts. And so with this whole idea of you wanting to be able to speak to your children about this makes my heart happy. It makes me extremely proud that this congregation has taken the steps to face this ugly thing head on and to be able to help our children navigate this without leaving them to figure it out on their own. I've been places where folks do not want to acknowledge that this is a real thing. They want to believe that everything is just fine. Everybody is good, and certainly the last thing they want to do is talk to their children about it. But hopefully, through something that I say today, you can be encouraged, your children can be benefited as we go through it. So, you guys are aware, in January, there was a situation at the Capitol, and it was an ugly scene. I was at home with a sick daughter. Everything was normal, turned the TV on and saw that. My heart broke. I was nervous, I was scared, I didn't know what was happening. And I'll tell you, it's the weirdest thing. Like, of everything that I could have thought, I was thinking, how are they getting in? Like, how is that? Shouldn't there be like a million drones that have like tranquilizer darts that are just shooting everybody? Like, you would think when that gets attacked, like we would send out the secret thing, but there it is. But with all the feelings I was feeling, all I could think about were my 4th and 5th graders. What in the world are they thinking about this? This is tough for an adult to process. And so the very next day, I went to school. In our morning announcements, I addressed the situation. I talked to the students about what happened. I talked to them about what my expectations for them as their principal is. I shared with them what's right and what's not right. And I encouraged them to be better than the adults that are being this example for them in that moment. I received some pushback, but what I had to think about is some of these babies don't have anybody helping them process this. Some of these babies have people telling them that was right and that was good. And some of them just need to know everything is going to be okay. And when it comes to all of the topics that you're going to go over in the weeks to come, I believe the formula is pretty simple when it comes to talking to children. Obviously, you guys are all parents, and so you know your babies better than I do. You know that some things work and others don't. But I plan to give my 3 points on how to address anything, but today specifically, racism. And I'm basing it off of the conversation I had with my babies that day. At the end, I'm going to open it up for questions. I've been told the camera's going to be cut off, and you guys are free to ask anything that you like. I will happily say I don't know. I'm not going to make up anything, and I don't speak for all black folks. I know what I know through my experiences, and want to give honest answers there. So the very first thing, with speaking to children is to share your expectations. What do you expect of them? And as I said, this applies to anything, but especially in this. With racism, yes, you can talk to them about the history of this country. You can talk to them about the relations between minorities and non-minorities. You can talk to them about the riots that are happening or that have been happening. You can talk to them about all sorts of things and give them all types of background knowledge, and that is completely fine. But at the end of the day, what children need to know is, Mom, Dad, tell me what to do. What do you expect of me? What am I supposed to do with this information you've given me? Guide me, show me, tell me, so I can feel secure in my actions that are coming. And that reminds me of what takes place in Joshua 24, 15 and 16. You guys probably know this by heart. It's as for me and my house, what are we going to do? We're going to serve the Lord. He says, hey, you guys can do what you want. You can go back to those other gods. You can do all of that stuff. But I'm laying the foundation for everyone under my roof. Anyone that's living here in my household, my people, we are going to serve the Lord. And when it comes to this topic of racism, there needs to be household standards that say to everyone under this roof, we are going to do X, Y, or Z. And it doesn't just apply to racism. Think about the talk that was had with you about drugs, or that you even had with your children about drugs. The very first thing you lay out is the expectation. We're not going to do drugs. We're going to stay away from drugs. Hey, if you're at a party and someone brings this stuff out, what are you going to do? Call me. You go over and you talk about the expectation and you drill it in so they know for just about any situation how to handle it, what to do, where to go, how to make it out of that situation. I've even had, in high school, I even knew of parents, and this is not my bag of tea, so don't judge me here, but some parents would say, hey, you can smoke marijuana, but it has to be at our house. Hey, not my thing. I don't get it. But when it came to that topic, they gave that child what? An expectation of this is what we're going to do. And so as we're looking at this topic, parents, have you laid that foundation, your expectation for your household and especially for your children? And what I want to do is an old teacher trick right here. I'm going to give you an opportunity to turn and talk, right? The teachers in the room, y'all know what I'm talking about. If you're here with your spouse right now, I want to give you 2 minutes, a minute and a half. I don't know, just whenever I feel like stopping you, I'm going to stop you. But I want you to discuss, what is your expectation for your household, for your babies, when it comes to racism? Go. All right, I'm kind of reading the room. A lot of folks are staring at me like, blink, blink, please. Please, let's move on. When I asked that question of what is your expectation, you wouldn't believe how many eyeballs went, what is my expectation? I don't know. Or how do I articulate it? I know what I feel, but how do I articulate what that is? And it's extremely important to have that in place when getting ready to talk to your children. And I want to throw this out there. For most people, and for many years, the expectation has been, we're not racist. We love people. It doesn't matter skin color. It doesn't matter any of that. We love people. And we're going to treat everybody right. We're going to judge them by their character rather than the color of their skin. And that's good. It's not good enough. I'm encouraging you to transform your expectation to not just being, I'm not racist and we're not going to be racist here, but to being anti-racist. Just think about that simple switch on words. I am anti-racist. This household, we're going to be against anything that is racist. We are going to speak up against it. We are going to call it out. We are going to challenge it. It will not happen here because we are anti. We are against. And you might say, well, I don't understand how that works. I know several people who are anti-abortion. I would imagine a lot of people in this room would say, I am absolutely 100% anti-abortion. And so with that same topic, if someone were to come to you and say, hey, I'm thinking about this, because you're against that practice, you would say, hey, let's sit down and talk about that. I don't know if that's the best thing. Let's talk this thing through, because it's not just, well, I don't support it. It is, I'm against it. And something can't continue to go on if we all have the mindset as Christian brothers and sisters when it comes to our household and dealing with this topic and even teaching our children to be anti something. And that's not just TJ's belief, that's Bible, y'all. Ephesians 5:11. Take no part in the unfruitful works of darkness, but instead expose them, call them out. Don't just settle with the fact that it's happening and it exists and that's just the world that we live in and it's always been that way and it's always going to be that way. It has to be a thing where we say, no, not in this house. We're going to be against it. We're going to stand against it. In Galatians chapter 2, 11 through 14, Paul says, I confronted Peter to his face. Why? Because at one point, Peter was cool with hanging out with the Gentiles, right? And then some Jews showed up and all of a sudden, he was too good to hang out with them. Their race, their religion, their culture, their nationality caused him to no longer want to be a part of them. And Paul had to call it out. Why? Why did Paul have to call it out? He had to call it out because if you read the rest of that, it says, and the rest of the Jews acted hypocritically along with him, so that even Barnabas was led astray by their hypocrisy. When we continue to allow something like that to happen, it poisons the others around us and it influences them to continue this hypocrisy. Call it out. Teach, talk to your kids about the principles that you have of not just not being racist, but being anti-racist. And that is something that is going to take some getting used to, especially if they're not that step out front and do kind of person. But again, this applies not just to racism. This applies to all sin. This applies to all evil. This applies to everything. And if you think about racism on the grand scheme of things, it's just hate. It's sin. And so in the individual class, we're speaking of it singularly, we have to call it out. So the very first thing when it comes to talking to our students, our children, I would encourage you to give them clear expectations. What do we do here? What do we believe here? How do I handle these situations here? Second thing is give an explanation as to why. So this is what we do here. Why do we do that here? And I'm going to give some scriptures and some passages, but ultimately the thing is because we love the Lord. We're followers of Christ. And by being that, this is what he expects of us. But first, look at Genesis chapter 1, verse 27. How in the world can I hate somebody for the way that they look when we're made in the same image? How is that even a thing? How can that even rationally make sense to anybody when we're all made in the image of God? So that's a why we're not racist and why we oppose it. But another thing, Matthew chapter 5, verses 13 through 16. Jesus puts it as plainly as possible for us old folks as well as our babies to understand. You are the salt of the earth. But if the salt loses its saltiness, how can it be made salty again? It is no longer good for anything except to be thrown out and trampled underfoot. You are the light of the world. A town built on a hill cannot be hidden. Neither do people light a lamp and put it under a bowl. Instead, they put it on a stand, and it gives light to everyone in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others, that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven. We are going to be this way because we're going to let our light shine. folks need to look at us to see the right way, to see the example. I love the analogy of being the salt, and I love explaining it to young folks who are used to having a refrigerator to keep things fresh, to having a freezer to put all that meat in, but explaining that once upon a time in the olden days, we didn't have that, and to keep meat fresh, we needed to pack it with salt. But it wasn't good if it wasn't doing its purpose. And Jesus gives us the illustration as the world being a piece of meat and needing salt to keep it from rotting, from spoiling, from ruining. And if we are not doing the job that salt does, the world is going to decay. We are not going to do that here because we are the salt of this earth. We are the light. Secondly, look at Romans chapter 12, verses 1 and 2. He says, I appeal to you, therefore, brothers, by the mercies of God, to present yourselves as a living sacrifice, holy and acceptable to God, which is your spiritual worship. Don't be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewal of your mind. By the testing, you may discern what is the will of God, what is good and acceptable and perfect. Y'all, one of the heartbreaking thoughts that I have about the church and some of the heroes that we celebrate of the past is once upon a time, the church was as segregated as anything else. And I look at this passage that says, don't conform to the world. This passage has been in the Bible since it was written. But for a very long time, the church did just that. It conformed to the American society of the time and was one of the last to change. We have to make sure that as we're talking to our kids about everything, anything that is sinful, anything that is culturally accepted, that they have the mindset of, we're going to be different. We're going to stand out. And we might be doing this thing alone, but this family, this is what we do. And we're going to do it because it's the right thing. And so, first, you give them the expectation. Second, you tell them why. And lastly, you show them. See, it's one thing to talk the talk. It's another thing to walk that walk. And I've known lots of folks who talk the talk, but then they brought TJ home as their boyfriend, and daddy's face did this right here, right? I was told one time by a young lady that was introducing me to her father the first time, I've heard about you, but you look a little different than I expected. That relationship didn't last. I've even heard from a mother who didn't know I was in earshot. He might be precious in Jesus' sight, not mine. Now, these are folks. These are people that I dated during my time at Freed. These are Christians who, if asked, are you racist? Absolutely not. They would say things like, I want my grandchildren to look like me. That's all. I'm not racist. I just want my grandchildren to look like me. Or I don't want my grandchildren to grow up in this society not knowing what they are. Being in the middle and being picked on by this side. All of those things are contradictory to the message that we're supposed to be teaching them. And all of us have a mask that we take off when we go home. We have the face that we wear at work. We have the face that we wear at church. We have the face that we wear in public. And then at home, we finally get to be ourselves, right? And in those moments where we're being ourselves, our kids are still seeing and hearing everything. And so it doesn't matter the expectations you give. It doesn't matter the reasons why you give them. They can be the best and the most creative and the most explained and thoroughly thought out. However, if actions don't match those things, it's all for naught. You might know this even better than I, but kids are extremely visual. They learn by what they see a whole lot better than by what they hear. And I am challenging you as you're speaking to them and as you're teaching them and as you're helping them navigate through this thing in the society called racism, that you can take on the same mentality that Paul does in 1 Corinthians chapter 11, verse 1, when he says simply, imitate me as I strive to imitate Christ. And we can have that same type of relationship with our children, that they can hear it from us and they can see it in us, how to deal with all of the things that you're going to discuss over the next few weeks, but especially with this sensitive issue of racism. I have been all over this world, and I had a chance to talk with my brother Maurice as we were heading up here today. And I've experienced a lot of people, and I'll tell you 99% are absolutely wonderful, great that I've experienced. What we want to make sure or try to have happen is that we can get 100% having the mentality that everybody is worthy, everybody is good, everyone is worth our best, and not have a situation where we've taught anyone to look down on someone else simply because of the skin that they were born with. Questions?